Every team, every topic, everywhere. This is Believe.
It wouldn't be the holiday season if there wasn't candy, right? Celebrate the holiday season with the Holiday Crush. They've sprinkled candy with a holiday theme and fun-packed challenges every week for 5 whole weeks, finishing on January 4th. The more challenges you complete, the better your chances of unwrapping delicious rewards. So, are you ready to crush the holidays? Play the Holiday Crush now. Download it from the App Store, Google Play, or Windows Store for free. Terms and conditions apply.
Ich warte seit Wochen auf diesen Tag und tanz vor Freude über den Asphalt. Als wär's ein Rhythmus, als gäb's ein Lied, das mich immer weiter durch die Straßen zieht.
Hello and welcome to Gegenpressing, the Bundesliga podcast from the Football Grad Network. I'm your host, Bryce Dunn. Joining me, as always, we have Manu Veth. Manu, how's your week been?
Yeah, it's been busy. I guess this is like my standard answer. I just come back from Vancouver. I was there yesterday, covered the Whitecaps, the Cascadia Cup defeat to the Portland Timbers. It was an in-and-out operation. I think we all were on the road more or less this weekend. I spent 9 hours on the road for basically 3 hours of football coverage. Yeah, so there's that. But, you know, it's also good. Busy is good. Lots going on the Football Grad Network.
Yeah, definitely. Busy is not a bad thing, but I wouldn't expect anything less from you, to be honest. Another man, that's been on his travels, joining us, as always, is Chris Williams. Chris, has that journey up to Scotland back taken its toll on you?
Not really. 8 hours there, 8 hours back. Obviously, I didn't do it in a day because that would be a whole day gone travelling. I went up for a long weekend. So, came back this morning, left at 8, got back at 4, a little bit tired. But I did pick up every league, every club, and every fixture about Scottish football. And I know nothing about Scottish football. So I picked up this little magazine that tells me all about it. So should any German sides pull a Scottish team in Europe, I'll be able to write about them now.
Well, there we go, eh? Now we've got a Scottish specialist on the pod as well. Just I
won't go that far.
No, I look forward to your potential Scottish pod. No, didn't think so. Anyway, we're going to move on and we're going to stick to all things German, I suppose. Let's start off with a bit of a surprise defeat. I mean, in pre-season, you play many games, don't you? You're trying out new formations, new players and whatnot, and you're not going to win them all, you know. But obviously, one stuck out, like a sore thumb a little this last week, and that was Bayern got beat by AC Milan, not just narrowly, but 4-0. Chris, this doesn't seem to have been received very well in Germany. I mean, it's a pre-season game, isn't it? You know, but how much do you think this may have affected them, or will it have affected them at all?
I don't know if it'll affect them. It probably didn't help that Dortmund beat them 3-1 a few days earlier, and then Bayern go out and get beat 4-0. It's a pre-season game, isn't it? And it's a pre-season tour, so it's a marketing exercise. So whether the football actually matters or not, you could ask yourself that. What's the quality of training like over there? The quality of pitches aren't the best. The stadiums are half empty. It's more of a merchandise and marketing tour than it is a football training session. So, I mean, they probably won't be happy that they got beat 4-0 and battered, in essence, 4-0. And they also didn't play well against Arsenal, did they? Got beat on penalties, which is very unlike Bayern. I suppose that may make up, if you're an Arsenal fan, for considerable 5-0 defeats over the last couple of seasons. I don't know whether it will or not. But for me, it's just a pre-season tour in an Asian country because they're trying to break into that market. I don't know if it's worthy of much mention. I suppose we'll see when the season gets underway.
Manu, would you agree? Would you say that it's not to be looked into too much? I mean, a 4-0 defeat pre-season, I mean, all of a sudden you win your first few games of the league season, league campaign, and all is forgotten, no?
Yeah, it's a difficult one because it definitely did make the news in Germany. And there's all sorts of headlines. Kicker with a big picture showing, several Bayern players completely exhausted on the bench. And it is difficult conditions over there to play, but we have to remember AC Milan is playing under the same conditions. And I think what made this difficult is the travel, the training. Ancelotti is training a lot harder apparently this season than he did last year, sort of to make up for what was by many considered a superb season. I mean, he still won the title, but the Champions League and the cup defeats really is something that stuck. So it's a tough one for them because, you want to market yourself and you want to show that you're this big club. At the same time, you need to do this preseason preparation. It's such a fine balance. So I think defeats are common, but it was 3-0 after the first half, and they utterly fell apart. Yes, there were some players missing. The Confed Cup guys, of course, were not there. Thiago wasn't there. So I wouldn't really take it too much as a warning sign. I think what is more of concern is these preseason games in general. And I know, Chris, in England, this has been done for a lot longer than it has been in Germany, but it is something that is pretty straining for clubs, isn't it?
Yeah, it is. If you say, obviously, everyone will know I'm a Liverpool fan. I am pretty much against it. I know it gives fans all over the world a good chance to see their heroes in the flesh, but I would rather, and you can say this about any team, doesn't have to be an English team, could be a German side. I'd rather teams trained locally or within their own continent. I don't think there's any benefit to be had by going on a 12-hour flight and staying there and trying to acclimatise and get your body, your biorhythm changed, change your food, change your heat and temperature, even daft things as change of a different bed. I think it's disrupting, and I don't think it helps. I don't think it helps English sides because there's no midwinter break. German sides, it is marketing. I mean, we'll see. The league's trying to break into new avenues, isn't it? The league is trying to compete with the Premier League, and it needs to break into the likes of the Asian market, China, Japan, Korea, or also the Americas, North and South. It needs to break into these areas to become a challenger and one of the strongest leagues in the world, which, the Bundesliga wants to be. So they have to do it, but if I was a manager or a coach, I probably wouldn't want to do it very often. I'd be surprised if they went all the way out to Asia again next year. Maybe they go a little bit more local next season.
Yeah, it's a fine line, I think, because on the one hand, you mentioning the Premier League, and you mentioned China, and China is, the Bundesliga's biggest market. And I almost wonder, yes, these games are good. I think Dortmund almost did it better than Bayern. Dortmund went there for 2 games, I believe, right? And they played in Japan and in China and then went back, and now they're playing friendly games back in Germany, which I think is probably better for them. We'll get into Dortmund, I guess, in a second. But I really wonder, breaking into this market is one thing, playing there, marquee friendlies is another thing. And I wonder almost if for these clubs it wouldn't be better to stay at home, to train at home and be more successful in the Champions League, because that will automatically grow your brand worldwide, wouldn't it?
Oh yeah, definitely. And the whole reason you train is to get better, and I don't see why you need to go all the way over to Asia to do that, especially with the TV reach at the moment. And I know the Chinese fans and Japanese fans will want to see their players, up close and personal. I get that. And if you see the video of Aubameyang being shouted at consistently when he was training by all the Chinese fans and the Japanese fans, you'll see how big a draw these players are when they go abroad. But if you're trying to mount a serious challenge on league and a cup and a Champions League, I don't think it's helpful to go on these long jaunts for very little football, maybe 4, 5, 6 days on the ground, and then straight back. You've got travel there, travel back. It's a disruption to your plans. I can't see any problem with just going to Austria or Spain at a push. You want to be training somewhere that's relative to the climate you're going to be playing in. I don't think there's any need to go to, and it's not just Asia, it's Qatar, etc. Get the midwinter break, get that because you want to get some sun. You want to get the muscles moving, and you want to sort of relax as well as do a little bit of training. So going abroad, getting a bit of sun on your bones in midwinter, I get that. Going to monsoon area this time of year, I don't get. Obviously, it's all about marketing, and I do get that. From a football-wise and from a coach, it must be horrendous.
Yeah, Dortmund are going to be in the United States next year for the ICC, for the International Champions Cup, which is, of course, what they took part in this year in China. It's a global summer tournament. I think the better alternative, this is a tournament that I've covered, is the Florida Cup in the winter, because the Bundesliga in Germany in particular, it's hard to train in Germany at the winter time, right? And to go to a place like Florida, do your marketing during the winter break is almost a better alternative, I think, personally. But, on the other hand, I get it. Fans from abroad, and I know that in the United States in particular, people are very excited when these clubs come. So it's really a fine line, isn't it?
Yeah, I remember when I read, was it Pep Confidential? Pep Guardiola was saying that I believe when he went to Bayern, that they already had a tour plan, didn't they? And he wasn't entirely happy, but I believe it was the States, off the top of my head. And he said that next summer, definitely not. No way we can do this if we expect to win things. So he's one coach that, by the sounds of it, believes in that. But I mean, would you say that, Chris, the coaches get much of a say in it? Because as we were saying, it's very much a marketing tool, and they want to push the brand as much as they can, from the business point of view. But do you think they take that on board when the coach says it, or do you think they just get overruled?
I don't know if they get overruled as such. Obviously, there's a requirement to do it. You have to fulfill your sponsorship and your media duties. Maybe they will take it into consideration, so they won't do it every year. Maybe they'll do it every other year. It depends what the club structure is, doesn't it, and how much the coach gets listened to over the sporting director and ultimately the chairman. I do get, like Manu said, I get why they've got to do it. I just don't think it's helpful.
No, definitely not. I would agree with you on that. But speaking of Bayern, Manu, we've seen this week that Philipp Lahm was voted as Player of the Year in Germany. What do you make of this? Do you think it was deserved, or do you think it's a bit of a, thanks very much, we appreciate your time in the league. He's been a fantastic player, and one of those, almost an achievement award.
Yeah, it feels a bit like an achievement award. I feel that the German media has overlooked him for one reason or another until this point to give him this award that, he definitely deserves. He has never won the Player of the Year award, which is, considering the career that he had and how great of a player he has been. And, we highlighted many times throughout last season how good of a player he was, and probably still would be if he was still playing. Yet he's always, he's escaped this award one way or another. So I feel this season, and this was not his best year. Would have been other years where I think he would have deserved it more. Even his breakout year where he played for Stuttgart on loan, I think that would have been a better season to give it to him. But I guess there was always someone else that stood out a little bit more, so always escaped him. So I think it's more of an award for his life achievements, if you can say it that way. Kicker who had this award interviewed him, and you can sort of sense in the interview that both Lahm and the magazine were a little bit at odds about this, because I think, and I'm curious to hear what you think, Chris, but I think Toni Kroos would have been the player that should have been given it. He had a magnificent season. He's perhaps Real Madrid's key player, won the Champions League for a second time in a row. And in my opinion anyways, the German standout player of the year.
Yeah, I mean, if you're going to open the award to German-based players and Germans playing abroad, then Kroos would make sense. But there's plenty of others. Aubameyang scored a hatful of goals, to break Lewandowski's heart. Lewandowski had a good season. Naby Keita had a good season. There's all sorts. I do think it's very much of a congratulations on a great career. I'm sorry to see you go. Oh, by the way, I've Player of the Year. That's what it smacks of to me.
I would have even said Ian Robin is possibly Player of the Year. I know he's injured for parts of it, but in a season that a lot of people expected him to maybe slow down a little bit, there was no sign of that whatsoever. Would you agree with that, Manu, or is it a bit of a a bit of an exaggeration on maybe what he achieved this year.
Yeah, Arjen Robben, I think he was better in 2014 during that World Cup year. I think he was very good, and I think he's always a very good player. But, you know, I think this may not have been the year where he could have won it. I think the other players in contention, Toni Kroos finished second, Aubameyang finished third, Lewandowski finished fourth, Modeste fifth, Forsberg, Dembele, Werner, Kruse, and Robben then on 10th. You know, I think of those top 5, Toni Kroos is really the one that stood out the most for me. And I mean, I think Philipp Lahm deserves a Player of the Year award, and I think he is, you know, I can't highlight this enough. I think he is perhaps the best player of his generation, you know, of that golden generation that won the World Cup. When you just take his pure talent, he's perhaps the best player of that generation. He just happened to play in a position that didn't stand out, you know, right back, left backs don't stand out like midfielders or attacking players do. Even goalkeepers, you know, Manuel Neuer has won the award twice, I believe. And that's because they're not marquee players, but players that are responsible for marquee moments in a game. So I think that's one of the reasons why Philipp Lahm has always been a little bit overlooked, which isn't perhaps fair.
Yeah, I think Philipp Lahm will be missed, certainly in the Bundesliga this year. And I completely understand what you're saying. In that type of position, almost if nothing goes wrong or nothing spectacular happens, it's almost a job well done, but it's not really seen, is it? But yeah, we're going to talk a little bit about Coach of the Year now. And Julian Nagelsmann managed to get that one off Hoffenheim. I mean, Chris, he really has had a fantastic season, hasn't he? And especially at his age. I mean, he was such a young age. He's still in his 20s. I would have to say probably deservedly so he won it. What about yourself?
Yeah, I do think. He's just turned 30 as well, by the way, the other day. Or is it today?
It's today, isn't it?
It's today. It's the 23rd, isn't it? Yeah, happy birthday. Happy birthday, Julian Nagelsmann. I knew it was around about this time his birthday was. Yes, it's the 23rd, isn't it? Happy 30th birthday. He's had a fantastic season, hasn't he? Last season. Revolutionised Hoffenheim, I think, real master of the 3-5-2. If you look at some of the games, we saw, early on, straight away. I think it was match day 2. They beat Werder Bremen away 5-3, which was a good sign. And they went on and beat Gladbach, and then obviously they beat Bayern and had a string of good results. That didn't see them lose for a long time, did it? They were on one of the best unbeaten streaks for a long time, weren't they? In fact, they were the only unbeaten side in Europe at one point, Europe's top 5 leagues. So he's had a brilliant season, and quite rightly, he's been tipped for bigger and better jobs in the next few seasons. But it's a real good indication of clubs promoting from within, wasn't it? As an assistant coach, and then he looked after the under 17s and the under 19s. And Mano will no doubt tell us that at one point he spent some time at 1860 Munich. But he's got a tactical brain, and that's really good to see. He's constantly moving on the side. He's talking to his players. He's a player's player. You can see the affinity he has with those around him. And whenever I've had the privilege of watching him coach, he is very enigmatic, and he would certainly enable me to play through the brick wall, which is what a lot of players need. And I think there's some special things could be happening at Hoffenheim this coming year, especially if they can get through what will undoubtedly be a hard qualifier for them for the Champions League. I would really like to see him pit his wits against some of the best coaches in Europe.
Yeah, but talking about how good his stats were this year as well. If we just look at them very briefly, you have 48 games while he's been in charge, 23 he's won, 16 he's drew, and only 9 he's lost. That's a phenomenal start, especially when Hoffenheim never would have been expected to finish as high as they were at the come the end of the season. And he's done a fantastic job there, hasn't he, Manu?
Yeah, and considering that it almost all ended with the first game, the 5-1 defeat to Stuttgart when he first came in. And remember, this was when he was 27 still, 28. So, there was a lot of doubters when Nagelsmann first started, the promotion to head coach in what was probably the most difficult time in Hoffenheim's still young history. Although the club was founded in 1899, we all know that it really kicked off much later than that. And the fact that he came in as a 28-year-old, basically just a background in junior A coaching. So this is the U19 sites in Germany. And, has had fantastic results in junior coaching, including at my club, as Chris rightly pointed out, 1860, which, until recently had one of the best youth academies in the country. Just went into this league and took over a club that was by many considered at that point to be for sure going down to Bundesliga too, and under difficult circumstances too, because he wasn't supposed to take over till the summer. Then Hub Stevens, the coach at Hoffenheim, got sick, and Nagelsmann had to take over. And he turned it around despite losing that game 5-1 to Stuttgart, which is a regional rival, of course. And managed to keep the club in the league, which is sensational, really, now in retrospect. And then, took the club from saving them, basically. Then he lost Kevin Volland in the summer. And, really, we all thought that Hoffenheim would, finish in the middle of the table, middle of the pack, or thereabouts. We all knew how talented of a coach he was, but we all thought, he'll take some time to adjust. But you mentioned his stats. Since Nagelsmann has been coach at Hoffenheim, only Bayern and Dortmund have collected more points than they have. So that is a remarkable numbers. And I think what stands out for me the most is his ability to switch tactics throughout the game, to just adjust, and do you have his players completely commit to the way they're playing. And remember this, most of his teammates, teammates, I'm saying teammates, but most of the players he's coaching could be his teammates age-wise. And I think that is something that also stands out for me, that this young guy who's younger than me is able to lead players, and some very difficult players. I mean, one of the guys that he's coaching is Sandro Wagner, and we all know that Sandro Wagner is quite a character, but Sandro Wagner under Nagelsmann developed into a national team player. And I think that is something that, the tactical stuff aside, and he is a tactical genius, but to also be able to manage all these players and players that are his own age, I think that speaks for itself. I think we can't even imagine how difficult that would be. I mean, Chris, you have coached a lot, but could you imagine doing that? Walking into a dressing room, and being the same age as most of your players, and could actually be a teammate. It's a fine balance between being the head coach and almost being like a teammate, isn't it?
Yeah, it must be exceptionally difficult, because the norm in football is your coach is always old, and I've only coached youth football, so I'm in that position where you're looked upon as old and maybe a little wiser, although I wouldn't count myself as very wise, but you've got that air around you, haven't you? And it must be very difficult. If you look at Bayern, for example, you've got Ancelotti, who's been there, seen it, done it. He's got this aura around him. And Nagelsmann's just turned 30, so you're quite right. There's players there that'll be younger and either his age or just maybe slightly older. But you're right. It's. I don't know if it's because he's so young. He seems to have no fear. I mean, I haven't seen a coach like him for some time. He's just ability to switch tactics, and they must work on that, because the amount of formations they played, he started off last season with 4-3-3, and then he switched to 3-1-4-2, and then he went 5 at the back for a bit, and they were winning with 5 at the back, and then all of a sudden he changed it to 3 at the back and went 3-5-2 for a bit, and then back to 3-1-4-2, and then eventually all the way back down to the end of the season Second to last game, they went 4-3-3 again. So he's got the ability to switch his side up, which gives you an indication of just how much tactical level of training they must do in their sessions, because you can't expect your players to switch between systems so easily and get it right. I mean, I suppose a little earlier on in the season we said maybe they had a bit too many draws, but I don't think that comes from tactics-wise. He's able to switch between playing Bayern and then playing Dortmund with different formations, and then playing Werder Bremen and picking up points. Then eventually, when they did get beat, they got beat twice in close succession, and he kept with the same. He kept with the same system, and then he changed it for the Darmstadt game over on match day 21, I think it was. And then they went on another great run, which lasted, and they were beaten by Hamburg in 28. They were beaten 2-1, and he switched the formation again, and funnily enough, they were back to winning ways. So it's just a constant evolution of his system, and that is really hard to plan against if you are looking to, if you're going to play Hoffenheim. You send your scouting department out, and you'll have your tactical analysis department. And when you sit down and say, right, okay, we've got Hoffenheim this week, what formation do you think they're going to play? You don't have a clue, because they can play any formation, and the players within can play in that formation. And are they going to be offensive, or are they going to be defensive? Are they going to drop off, or are they going to do a high line? It's really hard to combat against. I think that's why we saw them do as well as they did. It's because they're an unknown entity week in, week out, which is hard to plan for.
And they don't rest on that either. The things that they're bringing in this season is really interesting. They put up a huge screen next to the training ground so that, players could watch everything that they've just done in real time. That was brought in by SAP, which is, of course, the company that Dietmar Hopp owns, the big software company. And then they put up, and they read this today, and I think this is quite remarkable. They're trying something new. They're trying audiovisual training so that new players can adapt faster to the tactics. And I mean, Chris, you mentioned how difficult it must be for a player to play in all these various tactics. So what they have all these screens installed all over the training facility in Zutzenhausen and in Hoffenheim, where basically the tactical formations are running on screens all the time. So if you walk from the dressing room and onto the field, there's screens all along the walls where players can just watch basically highlights and stuff from last season. And it's constantly playing, so that when players have it as a background noise, a visual background noise all the time, which is really fascinating. And they admitted themselves, Hoffenheim themselves admitting it. This is an experiment. We don't know if it actually works, but they're not resting on any of that. Last season they brought in the technology to help players react faster. The foot nout or robot nout, whatever it's called, it was one of them. And he's very innovative, and that makes him a very valuable commodity. A lot of people in Germany thought that he's going to Bayern. He extended his contract. Dietmar Hopp has recently said he will not let him go even for 400 million euros. So that's that would be a new dimension for a coach, because he's so valuable. He's more valuable. He's considered more valuable than any of the players on the squad. And I think that is something that we're seeing in Germany, especially right now, that the clubs have not only started to develop youth players, but also youth coaches that can then, be thrown in. And these coaches are innovative, really innovative. And in this innovative like Pep Guardiola was, or Thomas Tuchel was. But there's another element that I really personally really like about Julian Nagelsmann. We always get with Thomas Tuchel and Pep Guardiola, we get the sense that they're almost technocratic. But Julian Nagelsmann, you don't have that. There's a very strong human element with him too. I don't say he's a buddy coach, but he is not a standoffish kind of coach. He's very much adapt to the players and senses the dressing room, and is very good at making jokes, and very, very good at sensing the mood of the dressing room. So that makes him almost that next evolutionary stop, right after we had Thomas Tuchel and Pep Guardiola, these tactical masterminds that went into a club, reformed the club, brought in tactics, and then moved on. But with him, we almost get the sense that that's almost the next level.
Yeah, he just seems to have a fantastic footballing brain on him. I mean, he was a young, hopeful, and labelled as a bit of a wonder kid, wasn't he, with his ability? He seemed to be a real hot prospect, and unfortunately, injuries stopped him, but he seems to have been able to use that knowledge, hone it into tactics, which we've seen plenty of players over the years be able to do it on the pitch and look fantastic, but just haven't been able to progress from one to the other. And he doesn't seem to be having too much of a problem there, does he? But we'll move on to Borussia Dortmund now. We're going to speak a little bit about them. There was a bit of a rumor about Aubameyang going to China. This seemed to be on and off, didn't it, for a while? And then there was talk about him this week going in the winter, but it seems to be have been crushed by the club, hasn't it, Chris? What exactly is going on here with Aubameyang?
I think the technical phrase in England is it's been shit-canned instantly, wasn't it? They tweeted out straight away that it was that no deal was in place with Aubameyang for a club in the winter, and they came out quite quick to quash this rumour. Now, it's very rare that football clubs come out and speak about rumours in the press. I don't know if they did this so quick because it was Bild that said he would go to PSG, wasn't it? Near enough quite after the Pokal final. They were hinting that he would make a move the week after, and that was never to be. So maybe the club had just had enough of this particular news outlet at that time and decided to stamp on it. I mean, it's a constant rumour, and if you're asking why won't it go away, probably because it sells papers and it drives clicks and it drives advertising space on websites, because Pierre-Emerick Aubameyang is a big player and a big draw and he's big news. So media outlets, including us, we'll talk about him as we're doing now because he's a big news, he's a big player. So I think the club have come out and quashed that. Whether it stops the rumours completely, I'm not so sure. We'll probably see it ramp up again as we reach October. That is probably going to leave in the winter window. It was good to see the club come out, though, and say that's it. International window's closed. He's not going anywhere. So they're now planning for him to be there for the rest of the season, which, as we've spoken at great length before, is excellent for the club because I believe, and Manu said it in the past, I think even you have, Bryce, that Aubameyang fits Dortmund like a hand in a glove, and I don't know where else he would get the sort of level of goals and level of performance he gets consistently anywhere else outside of Dortmund.
Chris, I wonder, though, maybe it is actually Aubameyang that makes these rumors just to keep them around, not because he wants to leave. I don't think he actually does, but he's constantly in the news and he's developed into such a brand name. You have Borussia Dortmund, you have the Bundesliga, and then you have Pierre-Emerick Aubameyang, and that's not negative at all. But he's become I don't think he's the best player in the league, but he's definitely become the player that we speak the most of when we talk about the Bundesliga. It's Aubameyang this, it's Aubameyang that, Aubameyang to Paris Saint-Germain, Aubameyang to Milan, Aubameyang to China. When you really analyze all these rumors, you can all put them into the nonsense box, right? But we still all talk about it all the time. And the Bild-Zeitung, there's, in Dortmund forums, and then when you talk to people in and around Dortmund, they're all saying, well, it's not the Bild, it's the Blöd, which means stupid in Germany. Basically replacing the I with an Ö. I don't think they actually are stupid. The Bild is a lot of things. And when it comes to creating rumors, they're second to none. They're nothing like what we have in the English press, but they are close to it. And I don't think they are stupid, and I don't think they're necessarily making things up. I'm just trying to wrap my head around it. I don't personally think that there's anything to this, but it's coming from somewhere. And we all know that Aubameyang likes to promote his brand, right, Chris? And remember the mask that he put on, the Venom mask? And he's very good, isn't he? He's very good at doing that, and he doesn't mind getting a telling off from his own club for that. Yeah, so you almost wonder if you think about where it could come from. Not saying that he's generating it, but he's definitely benefiting from it, don't you think so?
Oh yeah, and personally, we've seen that in the last few weeks, haven't we? But it's an interesting theory that he may like to keep himself in the press, and he wouldn't be the first footballer. I doubt he would be the last one to do that. Ronaldo was exceptionally good at it when he was in England. He's probably just as good as it in Spain. He said, "I just don't read the Spanish press that often." But yeah, he's a big player, and I think he will be surrounded by rumour constantly throughout his career, whether he's in Germany or whether he moves to Spain or Italy. I think he's just one of those characters that creates his own press circle.
Yeah, I would go along with that. I mean, it's definitely benefiting for him because I think he's definitely the biggest brand name that we have in that league.
Yeah, Manu, I think you might be onto something there. I think that could very well be the case because he just seems to be reported every day going somewhere, or Chelsea or something like that, isn't it? But there never seems to be much substance about it. But yeah, let's see how that one pans out. I think everyone can agree on this pod that it looks like he won't be going anywhere anytime soon.
And that's a good thing. That's a really good thing because we want to have him in the league. Yeah.
Definitely, that's what I was going to say. I think he's a great player to watch in the Bundesliga. I think he's at a club, as Chris said, that we all agree seems to fit really well for him. So yeah, let's keep him. But a man that's returned is Mario Götze. He's got a bit of playing time this week after having a metabolic disorder. Manu, how good a news is this? Not just for Dortmund, but for the player himself. I mean, there was rumours a few months back, wasn't there? I remember being in an airport, I can't remember where, but it come through and people had said that he had decided to retire. That was a load of nonsense. But that probably does go to show, just how frustrated he possibly was and, how big a disorder and problem this can be for a player.
Yeah, no, we don't actually know what exactly it was. There's a few theories what it could have been. Don't want to indulge that too much. The key thing is he's back. Metabolic disorders are very tough to treat because your body doesn't do what you want it to do, and you can train as much as you want to, and your body doesn't react the way it should, and that makes it very difficult. And we've seen Mario Götze gain weight over the last few years, and that was not because he wasn't trying. He was working very hard, and some say he was even working too hard, but it's just, something was wrong with him, and metabolic disorders are nasty. They really are. So, thankfully for him, his whatever exactly it is treatable, and metabolic disorder treatment takes about 6 months until your body reacts, usually, to some sort of hormone treatment. And you're best served in that time to leave your body alone, to adjust and train on your own, and train the right way, eat the right way, be among friends and family. And that's, I think, what the club did. They isolated him quite well in that time. And then I think it was mid-July, around the time of the Confederations Cup, he tweeted out a picture of him running and jogging. Wherever it was. I believe he was in California. And he looked good. He looked really healthy, and he looked the way he looked when he was at his best. And the pictures that you see of him now training, there's always a smile on his face, and he looked very happy in China and in Japan, and was very much in demand. And we're talking about Aubameyang as a brand. Mario Götze was on the way to become the German Messi. And I don't say this lightly. I think from his talent level, he is the most talented player we have in Germany, period. And he's still young enough to show that. And I think if he is being now treated the right way, and if he can get the playing time, which he will get, because Peter Bosz is the coach, has already made it clear he's going to be the key player in Dortmund's midfield in that 4-3-3, playing sort of an offensive midfield position in that 3-man formation in midfield, which I think is going to be very interesting to watch. And I can't wait for him to get going again, because, I mean, Chris, remember when he first broke out, he was phenomenal. I remember friendly against Brazil in Stuttgart, where Germany won 3-2, and there was Neymar on the field, and Götze completely outplayed him. And if he can get that back, I think we're all in for a treat. I mean, we saw it for flashes since then, the World Cup final. That moment of glory that defines his career and will define his career for the rest of his life, shows how good of a player he is. But I think, and I mean, I'm curious to hear your opinion on this, Chris, but I think there is still tons of time for him to become that player.
Yeah, there is. And I don't know how long he's had this problem for, but it may give the sort of indication. I think we talked about it a while ago, of just maybe why he didn't hit the heights probably he could have done after he left Dortmund and went to Bayern. And then obviously he's come back, hasn't he? So where he was diagnosed and he spent a lot of time off, and it was really good to see him back. And he tweeted at the end of the match when he came back on that it was good to be back, and that was liked and retweeted thousands of times. I think everybody, regardless of what football team you support inside of Germany, was glad to see Mario Götze come back, and that's probably because of how valuable he is to the national side when he's on top form. And he's young enough to get back to where he was, as long as his metabolic problems are behind him, or he's able to keep them under control, or the club are able to keep them under control with the club doctors. He can get back to that level because, at one point he was a phenomenal player, wasn't it? It was time of the Champions League final in Wembley. It was all around that period where he was, if someone from any club in Europe said, name a player you'd like to sign, Mario Götze was top of the list. So I'm glad to see him back. I will be glad to see him drip fed back into the Dortmund side this coming season. And hopefully, as we get into the new year, I think he may be a starting player under Bosch. And that would be great, as I say, not just for Dortmund, but for Germany as a whole, because, you're quite right. He'll live forever with that goal that he scored. And that's an indication of how good he is. And if we're able to see him get back to that, it'll be a thrill for everybody watching the Bundesliga and the national side.
Yeah, and I couldn't agree more. I'm very excited to see more of him. I think he's a hell of a talent. I hope that he comes back pretty soon. We'd all like to see him well. And no, we don't like to see any players be out with injuries, and especially not anything like this, So, good luck to him. But we're going to move on to Freiburg now, who actually are starting their European campaign. A little bit early. We're not even in August. Chris, you've been previewing this. Can you explain just who exactly they're playing? And surely it must affect the players who are starting their season this early, right?
Yeah, so they're going to be back in action this week against NK Domžale, a Slovenian side, and it is qualifying round 3 of the Europa League, 2-legged qualification, and then that goes through to the playoff, and that's another 2-legged occasion, and then after that you go into the group stages. So Freiburg are in this position because they finished 7th, and then Dortmund won the Pokal, but they're already in the Champions League, so the Pokal Europa League slot defaulted to 7th place in the Bundesliga, which is Freiburg. That's why they're in it. And they're going to be playing Domžale this week, who are Slovenian. Now, the problem they'll have is the Slovenian Premier League has already started. They're 2 games into it. So Domžale have already played a couple of games, and they won one handsomely the other night, 4-0 at home. That was on Sunday, so yesterday. And Freiburg, well, we eulogized over them on last season's pod many a time, didn't we? They are fantastic, but they've had a couple of departures that maybe may leave them a little short. One of them is obviously Maximum Philipp, who's gone on to Dortmund, and then one of my players of the season, Vincenzo Grifo, has gone to Gladbach, who I thought he's been a brilliant player throughout the whole of last season for me. So they're a little bit lighter than they were last year. However, I think they might just have enough over 2 legs to get through this qualifying round 3 and then into the playoff. Now, whether they can get past that will depend who they draw. There's some real strong teams in that qualification round, but it's a 2-legged game. Anything can happen over 2 legs, especially if they can get a positive result at home on Thursday, either a draw or a home win. An away goal would be awful. In fact, Domzale played Stuttgart in the 2005-2006 UEFA Cup, but they won at Stuttgart. So they've been to Germany before and won. They won at home against Stuttgart. So they know what it takes to beat German teams, although it's a very long time ago and those players will have retired. But it's still something they can look back on. So whether Freiburg have got enough, I don't know at the moment. And we talked about it last season, didn't we, Manu, that a good run in the Europa League might actually be detrimental to their league campaign this coming season.
Yeah, that's the fear, especially with teams like Freiburg, the smaller sides that don't have the squad depth. And you quite rightly identified that they lost Phillips and Grifo and had some difficulty replacing them, mainly because everyone in the world knows that they got 20 million for Philip alone, and any player that they've sort of been targeting, the club has said right away, oh yeah, we would like the large chunk of those 20 millions that you just got from Borussia Dortmund. So I think they're in a little bit of a difficult situation in that regard, but I trust Streich, the coach. I think he is very good at getting his players ready. Freiburg have some other players that are very good. Yannick Haber is someone I want to highlight. Florian Niederlechner, who you highlighted in the preview, which is available on fußballstadt.com, is also very good. And I think, Freiburg is still a Bundesliga side, and this is no disrespect to the Slovenian Prva, but they have to beat them, and that's just the bottom line. If you're a Bundesliga side and you finish 7th, you have to be able to beat the Slovenian opposition. And I think that first game is going to be extremely difficult for them, because they basically have to go from friendly game mode to a full season mode right away. And I think that's going to be hard. And we've seen some really weird lopsided results in Europa League. I remember Dortmund last year. They played a team from Norway and it was 5-3, and Schalke lost their first leg against Helsinki a couple years ago and then won the second game 6-3. So it shows you it's a little bit an odd time for Bundesliga sides to play. But, the quality on the field should see them through. And then, once you're a little bit later in, they should be able to attract the necessary players to do well both in the Europa League and in the Bundesliga. And the Bundesliga is key for Freiburg. They're not in the Europa League to win it. They're in the Bundesliga to stay in the league, because they're one of those teams that can do very well, but also can flirt with relegation.
Yeah, most certainly it's going to be testing times for them. Chris, you mentioned that there might be some difficult sides for them to come up against in the next round. Can you name some of these teams, or name one that would be particularly hard for them?
Well, it's when the next round is when you'll get the qualifications from the likes of the Premier League and Serie A, and the Liga will drop through. So you'll start to see some more what you would say household names come into that competition. That's where their problem might come up against. Obviously, it depends on how qualification round 3 goes, because there are some all right teams in that as well who they then could face in the next. It's in the lap of the gods, isn't it, when you are awaiting a draw. I've gone for them to leak one away goal, though, and for everything that Manu said, because they're still in that pre-season mode. So I've gone for them to win, albeit 2-1, which would be a dangerous score for them to go back to Slovenia with.
Oh, testing times, son. Yeah, well, let's just see how that one pans out. That's Thursday night, Chris, yeah?
Yeah, Thursday night, 8:05 UK, 9:05 on the continent.
Lovely jubbly. So any Freiburg fans, I'm sure you'll be tuning in. I wish you the best of luck. Guys, we're going to talk now. Well, normally throughout the season, we talk about Bundesliga, but we always cover a little bit of Bundesliga 2 as well. And so that is upon us as of this weekend, I believe. Manu, who are you looking forward to seeing in Bundesliga 2 league campaign this year? I mean, last year, we had so many big hitters, didn't we? We had Hanover, with Stuttgart. Obviously, those guys have been promoted. But there's still a lot of big sides down there, and there's still an awful lot to play for, isn't there? Yeah,
the 3 biggest teams are gone. 2 went to the Bundesliga and 1 went to Regionalliga Bayern.
Wonder who that could be.
I think Manu's looking forward to seeing Jan Regensburg.
No, I'm actually excited to watch the league because I can finally watch it as a neutral. Jokes aside, I think it is going to be an interesting season, and it's going to be a very balanced season because the real big hitters, Stuttgart and Hannover, and we all knew that they would go up, right? It was basically set in stone, and that's what happened. They are gone, and that leaves a wide open field. And I mean, when you look at the teams that are in it now, the teams that went down from the Bundesliga, Ingolstadt and Darmstadt, and this is no disrespect to them, they're more typical Bundesliga 2 sides than Bundesliga sides. So they're not the kind of teams that drop into Bundesliga 2 and everyone expects them to go straight up. In fact, I don't think either one of those two teams will actually be promoted back to the Bundesliga next season. I think that there's too many other sides in Bundesliga 2 right now that are better equipped, better put together as a team, and are just stronger than either Ingolstadt or Darmstadt. And that makes it interesting because it will be a very, very wide open league, and I'm really curious to see it. I mean, some of the teams that I have on the list they do very well, and one of them is, we saw last year, is Union Berlin. I think that they are hands-on favorites to win the league and to go up this year, and which would be really great. I mean, Chris, we went to Berlin and we had such a great time at the stadium, and the news recently have been that the stadium will be expanded to 34,000 seats, which is fantastic news. And I would be very, very excited to see them in the Bundesliga.
And Chris, who are you looking at? Who are you going to point at potentially going up, or you should keep your eyes on this coming season?
Oh, wow. It's a difficult question, isn't it? I mean,
there's quite a
Union
few.
Berlin, Union Berlin for a start. And as Manu said, we went there in May, and it was a fantastic Sunday, wasn't it? Bryce, you were on the main tribune.
Yeah, roadie.
Which looked, I mean, it looked impressive from where Manu and I were sat in the. I think we can just about say it was a press box. It was very small. But the atmosphere was unbelievable, and yeah, they're going to be one to watch. I watched Bochum play Dortmund the other night, give them a bit of a scare, but I'll be really interested to see St. Pauli, who had a bit of a shocking season last season and were lucky eventually to pull themselves away of relegation. Obviously a big club with a big backing, and maybe one that can push on this year. I mean, there's so many. I could go on all night. Dynamo Dresden I like watching. Kaiserslautern, Nuremberg. Obviously I saw Braunschweig play in the relegation playoff against Wolfsburg. They were another good side that I enjoyed watching for the match that I was there. So there's lots, again, to keep your eye on for this league. So it's not all about the first league on a Saturday and a Sunday. There's plenty to watch on Friday, Saturday, Sunday, and even Monday this season.
Yeah, definitely. It's going to be an exciting weekend because we get to watch some German football again, even if it's not the top league, I suppose. But I'm going to do a shout out for Holstein Kiel. I'm not saying that they're going to get promoted, but I'd like to see them stay in the league at least and establish themselves. I mean, this is a side that have won some of the regional leagues back in, I believe, the 1920s, if I'm not wrong. But they've never been in Bundesliga, so it would be great if they could establish themselves and maybe move onward and upward over the next few years. That would be quite nice. I think, Manu, you said that region has really struggled to produce Bundesliga sides that far north in Germany.
Yeah, they never had a Bundesliga side, so Holstein Kiel, as handball, European handball country, actually. They have one of the most successful European handball teams in the world, THW Kiel. So it's been a part of Germany that supports a different sport rather than football. But Holstein Kiel have a strong backing, financial backing, and there is a real initiative to get the team established in Bundesliga too. And they have a long-term vision for Bundesliga even, which would make sense. Kiel is a world-class city. It's a smaller town, but it's a world-class city. Big harbor town. And a part of Germany that has not had Bundesliga football. Of course, Hamburg is close by, but Hamburg is his own state. So, it'd be interesting to see that develop. Although I think they will have a difficult first year, from Liga 3 to Bundesliga 2. Although I should be careful what I'm saying. I've seen teams go up and then go straight up to Bundesliga. It's happened quite many times. So, it could also go the other way. But I want to actually give another shout out to Bochum, and Chris really rightly identified them. I thought they looked very good against Dortmund, and that's a side I think we should keep an eye on this year.
Can I just go a little bit off topic, but speak about St. Pauli? Chris mentioned them, but what's the deal with them and Stoke City at the moment? There was something.
They've got an agreement, haven't they? Yeah, it's just an agreement. So they're going to share ideas, coaching ideas, youth development ideas. I think Stoke City are quite keen to see how St. Pauli get embedded within the community, not just with the fans, but I think more on the youth football side of it. So it's an arrangement. It's definitely not some sort of feeder arrangement, as we've seen with other clubs, especially in the Premier League, have hooked up with Belgian teams in the past to be feeder teams. This isn't going to be a feeder situation. It's purely Stoke City looking at St. Pauli's setup and seeing if they can borrow bits from it.
Yes,
it's fair play to them. I mean, St. Pauli, you see, hoodies and caps and shirts and whatever, like I suppose like stamps or what do you call it, badges or whatever, all around the world, don't you? You see them everywhere, and I believe it's because they're more of a socialist setup, aren't they? But very much a community setup, and they do a lot for the local community. And I suppose Stoke could learn a lot from that, couldn't they, Manu?
Yeah, I'm not sure how the socialist left-wing St. Pauli identity fits with anything that stands for the Premier League. I will probably get a lot of flack for that, but I think the capitalist nature of the English Premier League will make it difficult for any team there to become anything what St. Pauli is, an alternative club looking for alternative means to make money and, not make money, but, to stand out in the world of the very commercialized German football as well. Don't want to say German football is much different, but, I look at Stoke's transfers, although they did make some big windfalls, recently by selling Arnautovic, but it's not, I can't see the two identities fit very well. That's just my personal opinion. Can you learn a lot from St. Pauli? I think you can, because, they have managed to make a niche for themselves in Hamburg and stand as a smallish club, stand, apart from, the big juggernaut that is Hamburger SV. And I think that is something that any club in the world, including my own club, 1860, and they're going down that route now, can learn quite a bit about.
Yeah, most certainly. But, guys, we're coming up to the end of the pod, but we finally get to do it again. And that is pick your game of the week, the game to look forward to this coming weekend. And no doubt sandwiches will be stolen, as they were last year. But let's start with Chris. Chris, you can have first dibs. What game would you point out in Bundesliga 2 for people to tune in or check out, and why?
I'm going to go for Friday night's game, Bochum against St. Pauli, for the reason I've just talked about both those sides previously. And it's Friday night. It's the first game of the season, so everybody should be watching it. And that's the whole reason I'm going for that, Bryce. No more, no less.
There goes my sandwich.
Yeah, I thought that would happen. I was like, who am I going to give this one to? Manu, then what's your second choice?
I would suggest to watch Nürnberg against Kaiserslautern. Two very traditional Bundesliga sides trying to claw their way back into the top flight, and be interesting to see how they get this season kicked off.
I think it could be quite interesting. Ingolstadt versus Union. Ingolstadt just getting relegated last year, and they had a little bit of fight towards the end, but it just wasn't enough. But I'm going to pick the Holsten-Kiel game. They may be playing Sandhausen, who finished about mid-table last year, but let's just see how how Kiel get on. I suppose at the Holsten Stadion, there should be a good crowd there, and it should be rocking. First game of the season, it'd be good to get 3 points, I think. So I'll go for that one on the Sunday. But that more or less does it for this week. Chris, so what have you got going on this week? What would you like to shout out for, or where can people find you online?
People can find me online on Twitter at Chris78Williams, and we talked about it earlier on. I've done the preview for Freiburg's return to the Europa League against Domzale, so that's on Fußballstadt.com. And then we're back in, hopefully, now, the running into the start of the season. So previews will be coming thick and fast for both domestic and European. And, of course, we've got first round of the Cup starting very soon. So, there'll be lots going on.
Yeah, we're getting closer and closer, aren't we? Very exciting times. Manu, what have you got going on this week? No doubt plenty. And where can people find you online?
Yeah, people can follow me on Twitter at Manuel Veth. Chris mentions it. Previews, the Europa League previews, we have tons of teams from the post-Soviet space on it. So Andrew Flint and I cover all the Ukrainian and Russian teams, and that can be found at footballgrad.com. Chris's Fußballstadt.com article is up, and we'll cover Freiburg a bit more this week because of this game, and there will be some profiles and players and etc. That's all gonna go up on the various outlets. So yeah, that can be all found at Footballgrad Live.
Manu, am I right in saying that the Gegenpressing Twitter page is going to be merging?
Yes. If you are following the Gegenpressing Twitter page or the any of the Football Sidage on Facebook or Fußballstadt on Facebook, and you haven't already, go follow at Footballgrad Live or at Fußballstadt, Footballgrad on Facebook, because we're going to merge all our social media into just the Footballgrad outlet.
Very good. You'll be able to find it all in the exact same place. Lucky you, eh? I've been your host, Bryce Dunn. You can find me on Twitter at Bryce Dunn11. I suppose the only shout out I've got to do is for the Glatza podcast. It was our first weekend back on Liga MX that's the Mexican league. We've had plenty to talk about already, and we'll probably be putting a midweek and have that out soon for you. I should start my vlogs up again soon. Unfortunately, this weekend I was in a land with no Wi-Fi. Chris knows how that feels as well. But anyway, guys, thanks for tuning in. We'll have another pod coming your way rather soon. Auf Wiedersehen.
Ich warte seit Wochen auf diesen Tag und tanz vor Freude über den Asphalt. Als wär's ein Rhythmus, als gäb's ein Lied, das mich immer weiter durch die Straßen zieht. Komm dir entgegen, dich abzuholen.
It wouldn't be the holiday season if there wasn't candy, right? Celebrate the holiday season with the Holiday Crush. They've sprinkled candy with a holiday theme and fun-packed challenges every week for 5 whole weeks, finishing on January 4th. The more challenges you complete, the better your chances of unwrapping delicious rewards. So, are you ready to crush the holidays? Play the Holiday Crush now. Download it from the App Store, Google Play, or Windows Store for free. Terms and conditions apply.
Thank you for listening to Believe. You can show support to your host by subscribing to the show and giving us a 5-star rating on your preferred platform. Check us out at Believe.com and search for BLEAV on YouTube.